Ani Bojo, Linda Nindishnikas, Woodstock Nindonjaba, Aurelia Ate Ni Odam. My name is Dr. Linda Rodenberg. I'm the principal here at the Aurelia campus, and I just introduced myself to you in the Anishinaabe language. And what I said at the end is that Aurelia is where my heart lives, and I learned that from Elder Eli Baxter, and I want to thank him for that. I think one of the things that we learn from the elders of this land is that when we begin an event that's going to change the way we think about our community, we should really acknowledge the people that have come before us who have taken care of this space, been caretakers of this place, and allowed for us to come to this moment in time where we can really make change together to better our community. And I know tonight's talk is going to be part of that process for us, and so I really do want to acknowledge the original caretakers of the land here today. For us, that's the Ojibwe, Adawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. And here at Lakehead and Aurelia, we have a special relationship with Rama First Nation as well. And I really thank the council that I've had personally from Chief Ted and others at Rama to help us really understand how we can lean into our community together and develop meaningful relationships. For those of us that are joining from our Thunder Bay campus via live stream, I also want to recognize Lakehead University's Thunder Bay campus is situated on the traditional land of the Fort William First Nation, signatory of the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. I acknowledge the history and enduring presence of many nations in these territories and affirm my own and Lakehead University's commitment to fostering respectful relationships that are built on reciprocity. And I think tonight's topic actually ties into reciprocity because when we really get to know ourselves, we can be present for those partnerships and relationships that matter and make a difference to us as we are working together to make the world a better place. Lakehead University's President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Jillian Siddall, cannot be here in person with us here today, and she sends her warmest wishes. Because the 60th anniversary lecture series is being presented by Dr. Siddall, we have prepared a short video message from her, and we're going to share that with you now.
Hello, and welcome to Lakehead University's 60th Anniversary President's Public Lecture Series. I'm Dr. Jillian Siddall, President and Vice Chancellor of Lakehead University. 60 years ago, in 1965, Lakehead University was created through the vision and determination of the people of Northwestern Ontario. And in 2006, the city of Aurelia rallied to bring Lakehead to Simcoe County. Our story has always been one of community partnership, of what becomes possible when people come together to imagine a brighter future. Today, we continue that legacy by serving the regions and nations where we are rooted. By delivering excellent education close to home, Lakehead strengthens the local economy, prepares students for in-demand careers, and drives research and innovation that create solutions for today and hope for tomorrow. Lakehead and the communities of Northwestern Ontario and Simcoe County are inseparable. We make each other stronger. The success of our students, the impact of our research, and the vitality of our regions are woven together. This is why, in celebration of our 60th anniversary, I am proud to present this public lecture series. It is our way of opening Lakehead's doors, sharing ideas and knowledge, and most importantly, saying thank you to our cherished communities for being at the heart of Lakehead's 60-year story. We simply would not be here without you. Last year, Lakehead was recognized as Ontario's top primarily undergraduate university, an honor that reflects the outstanding teaching and learning led by our dedicated and talented faculty. Through this lecture series, I'm delighted to introduce you to some of those individuals. I'm confident you will enjoy these talks. May they spark new ideas, inspiration, and conversation. Thank you, Miigwech, for joining us. Please enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Siddle. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce someone who is one of my very closest colleagues and friends, Dr. Sonia Mastrangelo. She'll be speaking to us today on the topic of self-regulation and its role in our mental health and well-being. Dr. Sonia Mastrangelo is professor and assistant dean in the Faculty of Education at Lakehead University. Her areas of research include developmentally appropriate practice, self-regulation, stress and post-secondary students, critical disability studies, inclusive education, autism spectrum disorders, and cognitive developmental systems theory. She is editor of the Journal of Applied Self-Regulation and director of research at the Applied Self-Regulation Knowledge Network. And maybe most importantly for the people here in this room and online, Sonia's just a real star in terms of helping all of us understand how we can be our best selves as we engage in the world. I will tell you personally that for me, every time I'm even in the same room as Sonia, I feel a little bit better about my ability to engage with the world in a good way. So she's a wonderful person to learn from, and I welcome her here tonight, Dr. Sonia Mastrangelo.
Thank you very much for such a beautiful, warm, welcoming message. A special pleasure. I'm so thrilled to be here. And I'm thrilled that you chose to come tonight instead of watching the launch of Bridgerton, which my understanding is the season starts tonight. So thank you for being here instead. It is such an honor. A very special thanks to Principal Rodenberg for her support. It's my 17th year here at Lakehead University, and she's the biggest reason I am here. So thank you very much. And a very special thanks to President Siddle for the invitation to speak to all of you this evening. How is everyone doing, by the way? I hope you're warm. Whoops. I hope you're warm, you're getting toasty, and that you've helped yourself to some coffee, tea. Please feel free throughout the presentation. If you have to get up and move, you are more than welcome to help yourself to coffee and cookies. As Principal Rodenberg mentioned, the topic tonight is on mental health, and I'd like to also give a warm welcome to all the folks that have joined us online. Thank you for your participation. I'd like to start off with a trigger warning. Before we begin tonight, I want to acknowledge that tonight's presentation discusses mental health and well-being. We will be touching on some sensitive material, topics, and so on. Please prioritize your well-being. Feel free to step out, take a break, or engage with this material in whatever way feels safest for you. If you need to take a moment away from the screen if you're online, or if you need to step away from this room to take a break, there's no explanation that's needed. A little bit about myself on a personal level. I'm a mom to 2 daughters, and one is here sitting in almost the back row. Sophie, if you want to give a little wave, there she is. She is a Lakehead student as well. Charlotte is in grade 10. I'm also a mom to 2 fur babies, 2 cats, and my partner, Phil. As Principal Rodenberg mentioned, I'm also a professor and assistant dean in the Faculty of Education, and I'm a Miller Method therapist for students on the autism spectrum, director of research, and I'm currently editor of a journal. Here is a brief agenda of what we're going to be covering this evening, and although we have a formal Q&A at the end, if there is a burning question out there, something you'd like to ask me, by all means, if I see your hand go up, or I'm not sure if anyone is moderating the chat, I'm more than happy to field questions. If they're popping up during the presentation, I'm more than happy to take them. But this gives you a sense of some of the major topics we are covering tonight. There are some interactive components, so if you are online and you're watching this solo, you may want to find a partner. You'll understand in a few slides why, but there are some interactive components to tonight's talk. I'd like everyone to close their eyes. I know we're in a bright room here in Aurelia, and wherever you are on the screen, I want you to think about your current role. You could think about the personal role you have, your professional role, and I'd like you to make a mental note tonight of your top 3 stressors. And some of you might be smiling and thinking, I've got more than 3. That's okay. But I want you to think about the top 3 stressors that are impacting you in your life right now, whether they're personal, professional, or a combination of the two. I'll give you about 20 seconds to think about them. We will go back to these stressors a little later in the presentation, but have them at the forefront so that you do remember them. I want to start off with this beautiful image of these dogs. We know that our perspective matters. How deep is the mud? So we've got 2 dogs here that have gone through a mud bank. The way these dogs experience that stressor, although it might not be a stressor because many dogs love to run around in the mud, but the dog on your right-hand side went through the same mud bank as the dog on the left. The one on the right is barely feeling it. Okay, those paws are slightly soiled, but for the most part, the dog is pretty much intact. But the poor puppy, or small dog on the left, is experiencing that mud in a very different way. And the messaging here, this is a great metaphor for us as human beings, is that we all go through some of these same stressors, but our reaction to them can look quite different. So I'd like you to get your hand ready. This is optional, but if you'd like to participate, I would love for you to do so. You're going to put 1 finger up if you agree, 2 if you disagree with the statement, 3 fingers if you're unsure. Okay, here we go. Let's play. Stress and anxiety always impede my learning. 1 if you agree, 2 if you disagree, 3 if you're unsure. Do stress and anxiety always impede your learning or interfere with your learning? Okay, I'm seeing some disagrees. Okay, so you're taking that word always quite literally, right? People are nodding. Okay, I'm loving this because I see lots of disagrees. Number 2, I experience manageable stress in my role. So think of your professional role. Is it manageable? Okay, good. I see a lot of 1s. That makes me happy as well. Where there's confusion, there's learning. Do you believe you're learning when you are confused? And this is a concept I teach in the Faculty of Education, future teachers, but I spent the first 10 years of my career in schools, and I often talk to kids, and they would say, like, I'm so confused. And I would say, that's a good thing, because you're still learning when you're confused, right? We tend to be hard on ourselves, don't we? If we don't understand something, and we say, like, there's no learning happening, but confusion actually leads to eventual learning. I can learn from my mistakes. Doesn't mean we always do. We're paying attention to the word can. Okay, a lot of 1s for agree. My mental health and well-being is as important as my physical health. What do you think? Okay, how many people feel that your mental health is more important than your physical health? Some are nodding. Yeah. Remember, there's no right or wrong here. It's all about your perspectives here. Technology has helped to improve my social development. So think of yourself personally. Has technology helped you in your social skills? I'm seeing some unsures, mostly 2s. Mostly 2s, okay? We're going to talk a lot about that. My physical environment can affect my ability to learn. Your physical space. Yeah, we have some really great research that looks at classrooms where students, 2 math classrooms. One was filled with plants and what we call green walls, where there was lots of oxygen and clean air. And year after year, math scores for those students are 30% higher than in classrooms that don't have any plants. You know, what does that tell us? You know, the importance of bringing nature indoors. I have the ability to turn negative stress into positive stress. I have the ability to do that. Do you fundamentally believe that you can make those changes? Yeah, that's that growth mindset, right? That positive mindset. So we're going to define stress quite loosely here, but as we go along, I'm going to give you the neuroscientific definition of stress. We commonly see stress as anything that makes us feel pressured, harried, anxious, ill at ease, which it is, but it's more ubiquitous, as much a part of our life as the air we breathe, right? So the key word here is it's part of our everyday life. You know, I have some friends that will say, I'm cool as a cucumber, I never get stressed. Well, that's actually quite untrue. We all experience different stressors along that continuum of the lifespan, right? We're dealing with grief, we might be dealing with illness, we might be dealing with tragedy, trauma, the list goes on and on. But stress is really a part of life. So it's here to stay, and we need to think about those compensatory strategies that help us to cope. And that's where self-regulation comes in. So what is stressing us as Canadians in 2026? And this is from a variety of sources, and I didn't cite them all here, but I'm happy to share the citations with you. But I've listed 6 or 7, and this is for adults. If I showed you a snapshot for youth, it's going to look quite different. For youth, for sure, climate is one of the biggest stressors, as well as digital technology. So we know inflation, the cost of groceries. How many times are we going to the grocery store thinking, oh, 4 years ago, I wouldn't be paying that for strawberries, right? That seems to be a lot of discussion around kitchen tables with friends. It's the spike in our groceries. Housing, rental and mortgage, housing insecurity, what we call financial paralysis. It's delaying some of those life milestones. I want to acknowledge my university students, 2 of them that are here tonight, Brittany and Vern. We're starting to talk about this in educational psychology. But some of these factors are impacting our young people that are in post-secondary especially, right? Trying to make ends meet and going through the inordinate costs of university life as well as holding a part-time job. And as we know, that gap continues to widen because the cost of living is so great. Workplace burnout, labor shortages. 1 in 4 are chronically burnt out, and we have to ask ourselves, why? Reduced productivity leads to physical symptoms like headaches, high blood pressure. Geopolitical tensions with the U.S. I've got the U.S., Mexico, Canada renegotiations that are currently happening, trade tensions, tariffs, and the various sectors that have been impacted that have led to job insecurity, particularly in the manufacturing sector. Environmental, climate anxiety, feeling powerless against those extreme weather events. And lastly, but one of the most important ones that I'm going to spend a bit of time on is the whole stressor around social digital use, okay? And this, what we call digital comparisons. 47% of adults, Canadian adults, are saying that social media actually harms them. There's this upward comparison that happens, feelings of inadequacy and social isolation. So here's the funny thing. In 2016, if you picked up the Webster's Dictionary, the word pizzled entered our lexicon. It's a combination of the word pissed, my apologies to the youth in the room, and the word puzzled. And it really captured the feeling that people had when someone they're speaking to all of a sudden pulls out their cell phone and starts to do this. So the next time someone does that, you can say, I'm really pizzled right now that you're doing that. And they might be looking at you like, what are you talking about? Well, it's a combination of these 2 words. There's a sense of competition for attention, and more people are attuned to screens and less to people. I can give an example, a stark example of this. When we returned to teaching here at Lakehead University, I was at the Opera House teaching over 100 students in educational psychology, and one of the first assignments was find a group of 3 other people, form a group of 4, and you're going to deconstruct this case study. Within minutes, I noticed a long lineup of students beside me, and when I turned around and I said, "Is everything okay?" the students looked at me and they said, "We don't know how to do that." And I asked them, I said, "Well, which part?" "Well, how do we find group members? We don't know how to do that." There was a paralysis. And I had to backpedal and remind myself that these students are coming back after 2 to 3 years of isolation, working with screens exclusively in their homes, sometimes with no interaction with other people. And so we had to do a little bit of reteaching on what it means to be reciprocal, how to work in spaces 3-dimensionally with people, how to invite people to collaborate and be in a group. So we did a little bit of that, and then off they went. But there was this initial feeling of panic, terror, and fear. How do I find my way? How do I find my group? I really love this comic. I think it tells it beautifully. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, look, this technology can fetch my emails, navigate to John's house, show me the news, send this photo to Lynn. But in reality, charge me up. Where's the Wi-Fi? I need it now. New email, bing, right? Those pings that are happening. I've got to read it now. I've got to answer the call. I've got a restaurant check-in. And, you know, there's this indication that we are a slave to our technology. So why am I bringing this up within the context of mental health? We know that the neural dendrites in our brain grow and connect when we build relationships with people 3-dimensionally. Has anyone ever had a day where you are on Zoom all day long, either teaching, hi Swehu, fellow colleague here as well tonight, hi Tamara, where you've had a full day of teaching online, or those of you who are in administration, it's Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. How do you feel when you have days like that? Is anyone more exhausted than being 3-dimensionally with people? Right. Staring at a 2-dimensional image all day is quite exhausting, and I'm going to explain why that happens to us on a physiological level. We learn, and the emotional circuitry of the brain grows when we are in 3-dimensional spaces. These interactions are crucial, and that's what sets us apart from our primates, right? We need one another. We're having greater difficulty reading behavior face-to-face. When we return to face-to-face instruction, I often say to my colleague, Dr. Ruth Beatty, I said, "What are you noticing?" She said, "Yeah, everyone's happier. Group work is going beautifully. Students are discussing social justice. You name it, it's happening. They're mobilizing. Projects are happening. The campus is bustling." And we as instructors, we feed off our students. And I always say we're here because our students allow us to stand on their shoulders and learn and grow with them and from them. So we're losing that ability to maintain and sustain a conversation. When you think about all the interesting things that happen when you converse with someone, you're smiling, you're nodding, your eyebrows might be going up, there are facial expressions that happen. You are not using those skills, not to the same extent when you are Zooming with someone or FaceTiming or whatever platform you're using. When I spent time in Korea in speech and language clinics working with students on the autism spectrum and other neurodiversities, I saw clinic after clinic, and they were called screen addiction clinics. And this was going back 10 years. And the oxymoron was that on one side, there were all of these clinics because they felt that addiction to screens was a national health crisis. But then on the other side, there was Panasonic, Hitachi, and all these conglomerates that produced the technology. And so here I was, I remember standing on a busy street and thinking how strange that was, that we had this capitalistic sort of fueling the fire on my right and on my left. It was the ramifications of that. So we know that attention decline among adults is real. Every time we're on Instagram and we're waiting for a like, those hits provide what I call a shot of dopamine that goes through the brain. Not that dopamine is bad, but we know that too much of it can flood the brain. And I'll be speaking a little later, what we want to do is promote a return to oxytocin. Okay, so the famous sociologist Goffman calls it an away. It's a gesture that tells the other person, I'm not interested. The other day I was on a Zoom call, and I won't mention names, with two colleagues, and for most of the Zoom, I saw the cradle of one colleague's head for about 20 minutes. And she was still chatting with us, but then she confessed and said, I'm just really sorry. I'm getting a lot of texts right now, but I really felt like she was listening, but then there were other things I asked, and she said, oh, I sort of missed what you said. We can only attune to a couple of things at once. I mean, some of us are masters at it, but it's really difficult, right? You're reading text, someone is speaking to you at the same time, you're trying to navigate that online world. In 1977, the Nobel-winning economist Herbert Simon wrote about this coming of the digital information-rich world. And the quote was, information consumes the attention of its recipients. Therefore, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention, right? We're being saturated with information. Even my father, God bless him at 81, he said to me the other night, I've been having pain in my foot. So I started Googling, and I said, Dad, don't do it. And he said, do you know that I might have da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? You know, this is what's happening. It's creating fear. And, you know, I love my dad. He's not a medical doctor, not qualified to self-diagnose, but became worried with all the possibilities of a sore foot. And my answer was, I think it might be time for a visit to the doctor, right? So consuming yourself with all this negative, because you'll get sort of those worst case scenarios online, can trigger feelings of fear and anxiety. So I want you to, we're going to have some fun here. Take a look at some of the new words that have been added to our dictionary. And I'm looking at the youngest person in this room, which I'm thinking is Evie. Hi, Evie. Good to see you. So glad you came tonight. And my prediction is that Evie is going to know most of them. I'd like you to take a look at these words. Write down the number of words that you can comfortably define. This is no easy task. I failed miserably at this task, just so you know. So how many, if I asked you, could you define them, you know exactly what they mean? Okay, so write this down or count them on your hand. Evie's already done. I love it. How's it going out there? You can define 4 of them? That's great. That's good. 5? I'm going to be asking everyone to divulge what their answer is. How many they, if you would like. No pressure here, but. Okay. I hope that's given everyone online as well some time to think about this. How many of you could define one word quite well? If I asked you, let's say, you know, what's facepalm? Would you be able to define that? Okay. Professor Laredo could answer that. I love that. I couldn't, I still don't know. I put together this list. I didn't look up all the words, but they exist. Trust me, they exist. How many of you know at least 3? You could define them. You could carry your own in a conversation. I'm impressed. That's almost half. How many of you could define 5? Wow. Great. What's that, Vern? Did someone say? I love that. How many of you could answer about half. You could define half. 9, 8 to 9? Wow, I'm impressed. I saw a hand go up right there. How many of you know all of them? Okay. Anyone want to give a shot at one of the words? Because I'm still, some of these are quite difficult. Photobomb is probably the one I'm most familiar with. Are most folks, yeah, Evie, go ahead. Thanks for your participation. I love that. What a beautiful answer. So well articulated. Thank you, Evie. Anyone else want to give a shot at defining one of these words? Does anyone know what a botnet is? Yeah. Great. I'm going to brag now that I know what botnet means. Thank you for that. Excellent. What's a humble brag? Because to me, it's an oxymoron. You're humble, but you're bragging. So what's a humble brag? Yeah, help me out.
Like saying, well, because I'm in such great shape, that marathon probably wasn't a big deal for me.
Okay, humble brag. I love that. Thank you. Very impressive. So the reason I bring up this nomenclature, this terminology, is that the world around us has changed. And our young people are accustomed to this language and use it quite frequently. The reason we talk about screens is that it's impeding our sleep. So when we think about stress, if we're not getting enough sleep, it does impact our brain. Dan Siegel, one of the leading neuroscientists, gives us a 3-minute snapshot of the impact of screens on sleep.
The impact of screens on sleep. People are exposing their eyes to this stream of photons from these objects that basically tells your brain, stay awake, it's not time to go to sleep yet. So it's 10 p.m., it's 11 p.m., it's 12 p.m., you're checking for email, you're looking for text, you're doing all these things. That light beams in you. It tells your brain, don't secrete melatonin yet, it's not time for sleep. And you're up at 12:30, you're up at 1, you're checking some more because you're up after all, why shouldn't you check? Now, you go to bed at 1, you wake up at 6 to get ready for work, that's 5 hours of sleep. We now know that what sleep is likely doing is allowing your active neurons to rest, which is fine. But more than that, the supportive cells, called glial cells, are now cleaning up the toxins that the neurons produce. And if you don't get from 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you just get 5, the toxins remain there for over 95% of people. There are a small percentage of people who are genetically different, they don't need that much sleep, but for the vast majority of us, we need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So even though it's like a badge of courage, I only had 3 hours of sleep last night, I'm working today, it makes your attention falter, your memory is impaired, your ability to think through problems is challenged. Your insulin, even, that helps regulate your metabolism, is turned upside down, so you're more likely to gain weight from what you eat and eat more. And then, if that weren't enough, it's actually toxic to the connections in your cells. So, in your brain. So what you want to do is prioritize sleep. Shut off your screens, let's say by 9 p.m. Give yourself an hour at least before you're going to bed, and keep those screens off. It's a serious, serious problem for everyone, and we can do something about it by actually actively deciding that's what we're going to do, is take care of this aspect of the digital domain.
One thing I always encourage teacher candidates to do is to share the sleep guidelines with families in that first newsletter that goes home, right? We don't often talk about sleep as a strategy for success at school, but we know that both the Canadian and American Academy of Sleep have produced these guidelines, and they're very similar for both countries, that give us benchmarks for sleep. The good thing is as we get older, we need a little less sleep, but really not that much less. How many of you feel as though you need 7 to 9 hours to function optimally the next day? Put your hand up if you know that about yourself. How do you feel if you slept 10 to 11 hours? Anyone feel lousy if you've overslept? Does anyone experience that? Sometimes. And how about if you've only had 4 to 5? How do you feel? Not great. Although Dan Siegel mentions there's a small portion of the population that actually can thrive on that 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and they're fine. But as he mentioned, that's a very small portion of the population. So what we want to do is prioritize sleep and turn those screens off. And, you know, here I am lecturing, but I'm just as guilty. I have a phone in my room, but lately I've been putting it away and opting for a book or a deck of cards, doing something that is not related to screens because those photons are going to have an impact on my sleep. So looking at stress and defining it in a neuroscientific way, it's an automatic reaction that happens in the body when there's a perceived threat. It's not always a real threat, but it's what we perceive. The release of chemicals, primarily adrenaline, sharpens your senses, focuses your attention, quickens your breathing, dilates your blood vessels, your heart rate increases, and your muscles start to tense. The example I often give here is, how many of you, raise your hand, have you ever experienced have you ever experienced someone cutting you off on the road while driving? Anyone? Unfortunately, right? Someone said today? I'm sorry to hear that. It's not a great feeling. How many of you remember the physiological feeling in that split second where you think you're going to either hit someone or they're going to hit you? This is exactly what's happening, right? Everything tightens up, and it's quite amazing how your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and you hit the brakes or you swerve. You have a quick instant where you have to make a decision. It's either switch a lane, hit the brakes, do something to avoid a catastrophe. In that 4 to 5 seconds, your body is doing all of this and giving you that adrenaline you need to respond appropriately. But I want you to think of the body that is always feeling that way. Chronic stress. We're not talking about a one-off, I got cut off, but constantly feeling like you're in a state of fight or flight. It's a very uncomfortable feeling, okay? What happens when it's chronic is it leads to a diagnosis of an anxiety disorder, right? It's that constant fight or flight. You're afraid of something. There's fear built into that. And that's what we're trying to avoid, because we know that chronic stress and that feeling of, oh my goodness, the adrenaline, it's very hard to go back to homeostasis and baseline. But this is where it gets tricky. Some stress is positive, right? Or it can be negative. It can be apparent or hidden. How many times have we met someone who has said, oh, I got to give a presentation. I'm so stressed. And when you watch them, you think, wow, they don't seem stressed at all. But it's hidden, right? Some people can hide it. But physiologically, if we put their body under a scan, we might see the limbic system that's on fire because their fear center has been activated. The amygdala is going wild. We also know that sometimes stress is self-imposed or forced upon us. Think back to the stressors that you reflected on when we started tonight. You know, where do those fit in for you? Are they positive? Are they negative? Is it something you're imposing on yourself, or perhaps someone is imposing on us? There are so many factors to consider. I'm going to tell a brief story. I often like to tell stories. This is a running story. I used to be a long-distance runner, loved running. Now I power walk. I'm aging, but I like to power walk. And my running story goes like this. I always run with a friend. I live in Caledon next to some beautiful trails. And on one particular afternoon, I was texting my group and no one was available to run with me, but I was free. And I thought, bless you. And I thought, I don't want to lose this opportunity to go running. So put on my Fitbit, got myself ready, and I hit the trail. It was about 4:30 in the evening or late afternoon. I'm running, everything's going well, moving along, enjoying the birds, and all of a sudden, I thought I heard someone following me. I started to hear footsteps. I heard branches rustling. And when I turned around as I was running, I thought I saw a figure moving behind a tree. And I had convinced myself that I was being followed. I was terrified. So I didn't notice this, but apparently my adrenaline shot up because then my mind started playing tricks on me. I thought, wow, it's getting really dark. I mean, it was not even 5 o'clock at this point. I started to think, oh my goodness, like what if my Fitbit, I lose my way on the trail, the navigation goes off, and what if I never see my family again? It's the what if thinking got me. People are nodding. This may have happened to you at one point in your life. But it's no joke because in that moment, I thought I was being followed. I ran, and didn't even realize it, but I was exasperated. Finally made it home. I had run 5 kilometers thinking I was being followed. I probably wasn't. I was imagining all. I mean, I don't know at the end of the day. But when I looked at my running time, I had clocked the fastest time I had ever run. And I had been training with a running group. I had a personal trainer. I had run half marathons. And I thought, oh my goodness, like I was shocked at my result. So here's an example of how a stressor, the thought of someone following me, was enough to give me that adrenaline boost that I needed to get out of that forest and get out of there quickly. And when I share the story with friends, they said, well, have you been able to use that when you run professionally, like pretend someone's following you? And I said, no, because the brain knows. Like I can't, someone's coming, like it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work that way. Even though I would like to imagine I'm being followed because I want to make it to the finish line faster, I have not to this day been able to replicate that, right? That's what adrenaline does. That's what fear does. It's that fight or flight response. How many of you have had that experience where you are quite scared? Some hands are going up. Evie, your hand is up. Lee, thank you. So what's happening in our bodies when we're stressed? Our digestion turns off. The thinking brain, if you put your hand right here, that's your prefrontal cortex. Everyone put your hand here. This is an amazing part of your brain. It's what's allowing you to sit here and focus after a very long day. Hopefully you've had dinner, maybe a little bit of caffeine to keep you alert. Your immune system is compromised. That turns off. We tend to get sick when we're stressed. Teachers will often say, oh, it's like the first day of the March break and boom, it all hits me. Because that's when the body comes to a point of relaxation, and that's when we can no longer fight that illness. Cellular repair slows down and turns off. And I love the work of a couple of neuroscientists that are doing research in the muscles in the middle ear. When we're actually under a lot of stress, we can't hear properly. So the next time you're in an argument with your significant other and you think, yeah, they told me to do this, but I wasn't really listening or I didn't hear it, just say, you've been stressed, and that's what Dr. Siegel says. It constricts my middle ear, but truthfully, there is research to back this up. When we're under chronic stress, we cannot hear the messages coming to us because those muscles in our middle ear are constricting. The capillaries, which are basically the hair on our arms, start to stand, and our ability to reproduce is compromised. Now, what are the things that turn on when we're under stress? Our adrenaline raises our heart rate of breathing, my running example, I was just like breathing quite heavily. Our cortisol metabolizes fat from fatty cells and glucose from the liver. We start to sweat profusely. Our endorphins are released. Hair is standing on end. And we have this enhanced energy and reactivity. Does anyone know the body's natural way of getting rid of cortisol, which we don't want in our body, right? We call that the bad hormone. Too much of it, it can flood the system. What is the natural way we can get rid of cortisol in the body? Does anyone know? Evie, thanks. Sleeping? Your dad would say that. I love that. It's a great answer. It's actually not sleep. Does anyone know? No, but humor is really important. It's not laughing. What do you think? Anyone else? This is a tough question. That's a great one as well. It's not the one. So these are all things that we have to, oh, I've got to exercise. It works, but it's actually much easier than that. You want to give it another try? Staying hydrated is so important, Evie. You're bringing up amazing points. Julie Howell said to me today, you don't drink enough water, Sonia. She saw that in me and mentioned it. Not breathing, but breathing is important, right? We think of box breathing, yoga, important. This one is tough, and don't worry, it stumps. I give this talk around the world, and anyone else? A few hands went up. I don't want to miss you. Okay, that's okay. That's a great one. It's actually crying. Were you going to say crying? Yeah. So again, it's not like if I said to everyone right now, hey, you all wrote down your 3 stressors, so let's all have a good cry together, right? Some people are laughing like, this is ridiculous. I can't cry on demand. It doesn't work that way. But think about the last time you cried. Right? We cry when we're sad, but we also cry when we're emotional about something. Principal Rodenberg shared a beautiful story about students talking about how excited they were about a social justice program, and she was so proud that she was moved emotionally, right? So being overly excited about something brings us to tears too, right? It's just that buildup of cortisol, and we don't know how to release it, but fortunately, the human body does what it does. And, you know, how many times have we heard the saying, all you need to do is have a good cry? That's where that comes from. You know, I can tell you when I was expecting my 2 kids, I couldn't even look at a Cottonelle commercial of kittens. I mean, the hormones were all over the map, and my husband would walk in the room and, Sonia, are you okay? I just saw these kittens running around with toilet paper. And it was, you know, like, where's my tissue box? So again, it was an emotional roller coaster, and that's because the body was going through physiological changes. But I had a moment today during my lecture. I'm not sure if my students caught it, but I was giving an example of a student, Trey, based on a true story. And this was a young man who was really, young boy, struggling in the classroom. And it reminded me of the moment when I saw him experiencing that stress. Still difficult to talk about because he had a lot of potential, but he was really struggling. So those moments stay with us. So too much stress does start to affect what we call the blue brain, which is this part of your brain. And look at all the amazing things that your prefrontal cortex does. When you initiate something, when you problem solve, you inhibit behaviors, you're planning your day for tomorrow. That's this part of your brain working on overdrive, doing all those amazing things. Your personality, the awareness of your limitations, like saying, you know, this is too much today. I'm going to go home and watch Bridgerton, and that's okay. Organization, mental flexibility, and so on. Our limbic system, which is here, has that amygdala, hippocampus, the thalamus. It's the primitive part of your brain. It controls the fight, flight, or freeze instinct. It's not rational, it's emotional. So has anyone had the experience where you've said something to someone and you walk away and you think, darn, did I say that? Like, I feel terrible. What was I thinking in that moment? You know, I'm smiling, maybe a fellow parent, Dr. Laredo. I know maybe my daughter Sophie could tell you a few stories. I didn't mean that. I was upset in the moment. I was stressed, and, you know, I need to go back and revisit this situation and have another go at it. I want to repair because I obviously said something that was hurtful, right? But that's what makes us human beings. That's going to happen. It's not about being perfect. It's a matter of self-regulating and constantly reflecting on ourselves. So the key thing to remember here is the difference between a misbehavior and a stress behavior. I had an incident recently, and I, of course, using pseudonyms here and protecting the identity of people, someone said, oh, a student in class didn't agree with my perspective, and it was the way the student handled it. And when I went to speak to that student, and they said to me, I was really passionate about this subject because I come from Turkey. It's a social justice issue for me. It's cultural, and I don't feel as though the instructor really understood where I was coming from, my own epistemology. And I thought, what a brilliant answer. But certainly an example of not a misbehavior. She was not intending to hurt anyone, but it was a stress behavior. It brought her back to a time from her homeland where there was some conflict and challenges, right? But it got misinterpreted as a student, perhaps, that wasn't respectful. But in fact, the student was respectful, but the delivery came across as, this is someone who's angry. This is someone who is, disrespecting other people, when in fact it was, no, I'm sharing my story here, and there have been some wrongdoings, and I just want to set the record straight. So what we want to do is not be permissive and say, oh, you can always do that in class, but you recognize, I'm getting quite heated about this. I want to state my opinion. How do I do this without coming across as rude and belligerent? Well, I can state my case and say, I need a moment here. I need to take a quick walk. I will come back. Buying yourself some time. Sometimes I get emails that tip me over the edge. I know now I cannot respond right away, because if I do, it's the limbic part of my brain functioning, not my prefrontal cortex. I need to walk it off. Sometimes I talk to my husband, Phil, like, can you believe? And then I stop and say, no, maybe I'm not thinking rationally here. I'm not considering other people's perspectives. So we fight when there's a stressor, we run away, we freeze, or unfortunately, when the stress is too great, we faint. And in my teaching career before coming to academia, 10 years in the classroom, I did experience that with one student who was neurodiverse, where he was promised by another individual that he would get to do something on his schedule, and when that was taken away without notice, he was so stressed out that he fainted right in class. It was the scariest day of my teaching career. So when we think about stress and all it can do to us, it really does wreak havoc on the brain. Fighting a stress in a grade 7 class might look like two people actually fighting. At the university level, it could mean two people are arguing about something and not coming to a consensus. Flight, and I'm guilty of this one in particular, I walk away thinking, oh, if it's out of sight, out of mind, right? The stress is gone. Well, not really. I'm just avoiding it. Freeze is just being immobilized. You're too frozen, you're stuck in that state, and you don't know what to do. So I did ask you to think about both those personal and professional stressors. We're going to talk about them across these 5 domains. Biological, not enough sleep, not enough exercise, lack of sleep, junk food. Emotional stresses, being overly excited about something or being angry. Cognitive, someone asking you to do a task that is beyond your capability. That's a cognitive stressor. Social, having a hard time picking up on the cues of other people. You might be in a meeting and you think, oh, that went terrible, and someone else says, no, that was great. You're thinking, was I in the same space? What's going on here? And the last one, which we often don't consider, is prosocial. How many times do we receive a phone call from someone who has unleashed all of their stress on us, and then we have to cope with that? And if we get 3 or 4 phone calls like that in a day, that's a lot to negotiate, because maybe our backpack is already full that day. Here's a list of some energy zappers that I put together, but I also put a question mark. Raise your hand if you can resonate with some of these energy zappers. Evie, your hand went up. Lee, anyone else? Are any of these zapping your energy currently? I see hands at the front, right? Feeling guilty, feeling grief. Reverberation, like certain sounds, bright lights, crowds. Disappointment, worrying, tags in your clothes. I mean, I love to walk at night. If I have a pebble in my shoe or my boot, which has happened the last 2 times last week, I had to stop in -25 and remove my boot in the middle of not the middle of the road, but actually we were walking on the road because the sidewalks weren't plowed, but off my boot came, and my neighbor giggled, and I said, I'm really sorry, but the stone in my boot is really driving me bananas. But for someone else, it wouldn't be a stressor. And you know, we might be smiling and thinking, oh, that's nothing. On one day, that stone might not bother me, but if I'm already carrying a lot, it's those little things where we become reactionary. So here are some other signs. I won't go through all of them because I do have another 20 minutes, and I hope that's okay. Overstress signs, hard to problem solve, memory lapses. I can tell you that's happening to me lately. I'll go downstairs and I know what I need to pick up from the freezer. I get there and I look at my freezer and say, why am I here? Anyone else go through that? Someone join me in that? Yeah, and it's like I knew what I had to pick up, but it's gone. My mind is somewhere else. Lagging energy, intrusive thoughts. Yerkes and Dodson created this beautiful stress performance connection chart. A lot of my research has been in Mishkigogumog First Nation. It's about 20 hours north of here. And we had this chart blown up in every classroom. And what students do is they come into the classroom with a little marker with their name, and they let their teacher know where they are on that hill. You know, are they sleeping? Did they not have enough sleep? So we know that a medium amount of stress along the x-axis is what's going to give us that optimal performance at school. But if we have too much stress as we move along the x-axis, we're going to be anxious and disorganized. And it's incredible to see students move their own marker on that hill throughout the day, right? And we know now that we can teach this developmentally as young as the age of 5. How do we do it at that age? We're using puppets, we're using skits, we're using drama. We know that they're able to learn it. I had a fascinating conversation with Dr. Laredo in the parking lot today, and I always love chatting with her because her enthusiasm and the work she's doing in classrooms with students in the sciences, and I thought, oh my, how do we clone this person? Like, just amazing. And I, just based on the activities she described, I walked away thinking, I wish I had a science teacher like that back in the day because I learned from a textbook. But all of those hands-on, rich tasks is going to push those kids in that optimal functioning. And the same holds true for us as adults, right? Unless we're getting creative and really working on teams and problem solving, we learn and grow from one another, right? She mentioned it. She said, I love the students. They give me so much, right? And I know they're learning from you too. It's reciprocal. So I won't go through this, but when we think of the thermostat, when we're under stressed, we go from 0 to 10 quite quickly. We have this disproportionate reaction to stress. It's hard to calm ourselves down, and the body becomes overwhelmed with stress. Okay, why are there Doritos on a slide? Students, did I tell you the Doritos story in my class? Yeah. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to hear it again. But I have been teaching here for 17 years, and I often give, and my daughter knows this about me, and Sophie will say, Mom, they're so bad for you. And And I'm like, I know, but I'm really stressed right now. And my husband, love him dearly, picks up the big jumbo Costco bags of Doritos, right? It's the kind of chip, you can't just have one. Does anyone else like Doritos? Am I the only one? Yeah. It's the salt. Do you like them, Evie? Yeah. So, and for me, it's the zesty cheese, but I'll eat any type of Doritos. And in fact, I laughed one year, students on the last day brought me like 7 flavors. Conversely, the year before, I had a group of students that found every article that linked Doritos to cancer. And they said, Sonia, we're doing this for you, for your health and well-being. Stop eating them. They're so bad for you. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay, did it work? No, it only worked for a very short time, but the next time I was stressed, and you don't just eat one. Once you start, overeating is a sign of stress. You don't even realize you're doing it until you look in the bag and there's none left, right? But that's my go-to. I know when I'm going for Doritos, I'm in trouble, right? So I'm proud to say this doesn't happen weekly, but I would say about once a month, I am going for those orange triangles. If I see them on a kitchen counter, I open the cupboard and that's it. It's like the brain, the reward system kicks in. I need to have them and I need to have them now. So think about your own reward system. Is it chocolate? I had a lovely participant once come to me and said, Sonia, I smoke. And I know it's a stress behavior. It's the nicotine, I need it, and my brain tells me I need it now. I didn't want to tell you, but for me, it's cigarettes. And I said, this isn't about punishing ourselves. It's recognizing, why is this happening? Why now in my life? Why am I drawn to those Doritos? Well, I can tell you what's happening on those certain days. Something happened that triggered that alarm, right? I'm functioning from the limbic part of the brain. We are going to take a 5-minute break, but I need a volunteer to come to the front, and maybe I'll call on the youngest person in the room. Yes! And she's smiling. That's great. Evie, come on down. If it's okay, I'm going to introduce Evie, who I've known for many years now, currently in grade 7. Right? Did I get that right? Yes. Grade 7 student here in Simcoe County, and deserves a round of applause on a Thursday night coming to this lecture. Okay, you're going to try this with the person beside you. For those that are online, I encourage you to take a minute, find someone in your home or wherever you are, you're going to need a partner for this. So this is called a visual, motor, tactile, auditory integration task. It's an example of, I'm going to give Evie certain tasks. She's going to want to do them, but because of the way her hands are positioned, she won't be able to execute them. Unless, she might surprise me. So the first thing is, Evie, and you're going to try this with the person beside you. Oh, sorry. You're going to try this with the person beside you. If you can come a little closer, and thank you for volunteering. So you're going to put 2 hands out. Okay, you might want to start to do this with the person beside you. If it's someone you don't know, feel free to introduce yourself. And you're going to put your hands one in front of the other like this. So just cross them. So one is going to do that. The other one is going to be the pointer. So just one person in the pair. One person. You're going to bring them in, cross, and bring them forward. I'm going to show you one more time. So one person on the team in the pair, hands out, cross them, turn them in, interlace the fingers, and bring them in so that you can see the fingers and stay like that. Okay, is everyone in that position? Okay, 2 hands out. You're going to flip them over. Interlace the fingers, perfect, Linda, and just bring them in. Great. Your partner is going to do 3 things. The first thing is I'm going to turn Evie this way as I move a little closer. Is it okay that I'm touching your shoulder? Thank you, I should have asked you first. I am going to point to certain fingers and you're going to use your visual sense to move these fingers. Here we go. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just pointing. So she's relying on her visual sense.
That's very confusing.
Okay, she just said it's very confusing. Not bad, not bad. Good. Okay. Now I want you to touch the fingers. Don't say anything, but you're going to do the same thing, but touch the fingers. Wow, Evie, look at you go. Amazing. Ah.
It's hard to see which hand is which, so I'm like.
Describe to your partner how you're feeling as you're doing this.
It's like you don't know which hand is which.
Yes.
So I have to.
So the third thing we're going to try is you're going to touch, point, and talk. Touch, point, and talk. Here's what it looks like. Evie, move your your left thumb. Evie, move your right thumb. Evie, move your right index finger.
Oh wait, that's this hand. Okay.
Evie, move your left index finger. Evie, move your middle finger. Evie, move your ring finger. Amazing. Amazing.
All right.
I have a little gift for Evie for being our volunteer tonight. You get a Lakehead cup. It hurts. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Actually, Evie, can you tell everyone which of the three ways was easiest for you?
Probably the touch point. Just.
The second one.
Yeah.
Did it get confusing as I said left, right, pinky, thumb?
Yeah.
Right? It's too much information, even though I was giving you the tactile input. Most people do best with the second, right? Feeling what they're being asked to do. How many people did pretty well on the first, just using their visual domain to try to work through? People are laughing. This is no easy task, but guess what? The more you do it, the easier it becomes. It's like working a muscle, right? So we can train our brain to get better at this visual motor integration task the more we do it. And the reason I show this to teacher candidates is sometimes as teachers, we rely on the auditory domain. And that's why I loved what Dr. Laredo said. Oh, I've got the hands-on, you're using tactile, you're touching things, you're pulling them apart, you're experimenting, you're analyzing, you're writing things down. There are so many components to learning, and you're activating all of that. We don't lose that as humans, and yet what do we often get? Someone speaking to us and we're taking notes, and this is why I'm trying to make it a little more interactive tonight. Again, round of applause. You were amazing. Fantastic. Enjoy your cup. So make sure you've tried to be the pointer and the receiver so that you've taken a turn. Sorry to those online. So what is self-regulation? Did everyone have fun with that, by the way? Anyone surprised with how I heard lots of laughter? It's a very tricky experiment. Try that. Just always remember you're interlacing and bringing it in. I loved doing that with Evie because as I was pointing, she's like, oh, shoot, I know I'm moving the wrong one. I didn't mean to move that one. It's the brain playing tricks, right? Because you're distorting what you're actually seeing, but then there's the complication of feeling it, then hearing it. You could have a lot of fun and blindfold the other person and try this. There's so many variations. But that leads us to self-regulation, which really is a powerful method for understanding all the stress that we've talked about, managing your energy flow. And I have about 15 more minutes, 1-5. It's a term that's used in different ways. If you sat there right now and Googled self-regulation, there would be so many definitions, so many theorists, but the one that I've adopted is actually from my PhD mentor, Stuart Shanker, who's now a professor emeritus at York University. And it's really about the original neurophysiological meaning of the word, which is your brain body's response to stress, including how much energy you have to expend to deal with the stressor, how you recover, and eventually how you restore. And my hope for everyone in this room and online, your loved ones and all students, is that we come to learn how to self-regulate so that we can deal with the stressors of life. So we know that effective self-regulation, that's the word self. We have to eventually do this for ourselves, is to really respond to stress in all of its many facets, whether it's positive or negative, whether it's hidden or overt, whether it's minor, as well as traumatic at times or toxic. And I'm going to show you some tricks on how to do that. This is another chart that I blow up and I show to young people, but this one is great. I have one in my office. It's important because the Thayer matrix teaches us that energy and tension work together. Most of you tonight, my hope is that when you're going to sleep, you have low energy, low tension. You have no more energy. You're tired, but your tension is low as well. Okay, so you're ready for your pillow, you're okay, you close your eyes, and you fall into blissful sleep. If you're anxious, it's going to be really hard to fall asleep. The other state is in this yellow zone. And this is a beautiful zone where you've got lots of energy and there's no tension or stress. You're tackling all the things that come your way in a day. You're feeling good about the tasks. You're feeling good about your interactions with people. We start to run into problems when we move to the right side of this scale. We've got high energy and high tension. It's not bad to be in this quadrant. You're ready to go, but you're feeling a little bit nervous, okay? So that adrenaline is starting to creep up, but you've got this. You have that confidence and belief that you can tackle it. Where we run into problems is the lower right-hand quadrant. You're tense. You do not have the energy to deal with the demands coming your way. The tension load is too high, okay? You're wired, you're fatigued. Some of the quote here is, "I'm worried, leave me alone. It's all too much right now." The other thing that gets mistaken is the concept of self-regulation versus self-control. And what I want to describe tonight is that self-regulation has to come first, okay? If I understand that I'm stress eating those Doritos, someone shouldn't say to me, "Sonia, where's your self-control? You know those are carcinogenic. They're loaded with calories. They're so bad for you. Why are you eating them?" That's punitive. That's judgmental. It's not going to help me stop eating Doritos. But if I look at the underlying reason, why am I eating them today? Why now? Chances are I can answer that question and start to reflect on my own stress level and say to myself, "Oh, I'm about to go for them. I'm having a moment. Maybe I can drink water instead, or go for that much needed walk, or talk to my best friend who always lifts up my mood." So we have these states of arousal that we work through throughout the day. Calm is your superpower. And if there's one thing you walk away with tonight, is that sense of calm. How many of you have someone in your life, just hearing their voice, there's just a calmness about them, and it's so infectious that you might be having a stressful moment, and just in chatting with this person, you think, "Wow, what a lovely voice. I could hear this person all day." It's just this blissful, beautiful tone, and it's lovely. And you really appreciate it when you are particularly stressed. So again, what does the research tell us? Why is this ability to self-regulate, to remain calm, even in times of stress, so important? We know that it's actually more important than IQ, right? It's a better predictor of academic success. It leads to better quality of life. It helps us to restore those feelings of self-efficacy, better relationships. It correlates with longevity and happiness. And the list goes on and on. When we are balanced, which is the word homeostasis, that equals happiness. So how do we do this? if we were really lucky, we had at least one loving caregiver. Someone who picked us up when we cried, someone who changed our diaper when we were soiled, someone who fed us when we couldn't feed ourselves. We needed a co-regulatory partner, someone in our life to do those things. Whether it was a mother, a father, an aunt, a grandparent, a trusted neighbor, you needed one loving adult in your life, right? Sometimes students will say to me, you know, I was raised by my grandmother, like, how has that affected me? And my response is always, well, what was your childhood like? Oh, she taught me how to crochet, and she was always there for me. Well, there's your answer, right? You had a loving, trusted adult in your life, and how wonderful is that? We know that many students don't have that. It has to be bi-directional, and through positive experiences, those calm, loving interactions, we become adults who can regulate ourselves during times of stress. So what does that mean, right? As adults, do we stop needing one another? Well, the answer is no. We will always need someone to help us co-regulate. It's being soothed when we're stressed, having that calm approach. Sometimes it's using nonverbal cues and gestures and body language. Has anyone ever heard the saying, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it, right? That tonality is so important. You know, at the end of the day, as human beings, what are we looking for? Room to express our emotions. We want times of quiet introspection. Raise your hand if you really value some alone time sometimes, right? Just having those moments of silence and you think, wow, this has been such a gift in a busy home. We want that collaborative problem solving. We want space to think differently, imagine, invent. And those of you in leadership roles, how exciting that, you know, hopefully you have the breathing room to do that. And again, we have to feel safe. Students who feel safe with their teacher, we teach this in the faculty, are going to thrive. If a student comes into a classroom and feels belittled or degraded or afraid of their teacher, they will not perform. They will shut down. The same holds true for adults. Now, what can we learn from our furry friends? They do this beautifully. Take a look at this clip. So I watch this and say, animals do it so beautifully, there's no reason why we can't do that too, right? Incredible to see those turtles, and you saw this on Fast Forward. That probably took an hour or more, but the patience and the resilience of that helper, you know, how amazing that there's that persistence. I will do whatever it takes to help you get through this. Beautiful, beautiful examples here. We can only help another find calmness if we ourselves remain calm and find the interaction soothing for both of us. Calm begets calm. So what we don't want, and you know, I often share this with teacher candidates, in the history of calming down, has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down? You know, it just doesn't happen. If someone is quite stressed and I walk in and say, well, would you calm down? Like, what's going on here? Calm down. Do I sound like a soothing, safe, trusted person? I'm using two words that are quite meaningless at that time because someone is under stress. I'm not lending them my calm. So what I often say to teacher candidates, when you see a student engaged in a tantrum, the worst thing we can do is say, you know, come on, calm down. What we can do is quickly turn off lights, maybe throw on some classical music, I like to turn on running water, and I break rules. I bring out lavender oil, all the things that I know are going to help a student rebalance and reassure that student, I know you're upset right now. It's going to be okay, right? This is a bump in the road. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We have to instill those feelings of hope, not just in the children and youth we work with, but also one another when times are tough. So just to recap, a few more slides. I'm sorry I went over on time. Shanker Self-Reg is a model for us to think about, read and reframe the behavior. Ask yourself, is this a stress behavior or a misbehavior? A misbehavior is, I know I could have done something differently. I'm functioning from this part of the brain, right? I know that I shouldn't have eaten those Doritos, but I went for them anyhow. The stress behavior is coming from here. I'm really stressed right now. I'm going to eat them frantically. I'm not even thinking straight. I'm so upset about something. That's the stress brain. Recognize the stressors. Look at those 3 stressors you wrote down or you thought about tonight. Which domains do they impact? Biological, social, emotional, pro-social? Find ways to reduce your stress. Walking, running, yoga, which I'm going to talk about. Doritos, sometimes. But find your own personal toolkit. What works for one student is different for another. What works for one adult in this room is very different for another. And then always responding. Have your strategies to promote restoration and resilience. Okay? The Brack cycle is real. It's based on the work of Kleitman. There's 90-minute cycles of higher and lower alertness called the circadian basic rest activity cycle, the Brack cycle. How many of you go into a Zoom meeting and you're feeling pretty sharp and alert, but by that 60-minute mark, you're starting to fade away? The natural instinct is to get up, grab coffee, get something to eat, have tea. It's not because you're hungry or thirsty, but we naturally do that to stay alert again. That's part of the Brack cycle. You've been sitting here for an hour and a half. I know I'm starting to lose some people, and my apologies, but that's your Brack cycle saying, can I get up and maybe refill my coffee? Because if I don't, I might fall asleep. If the lights were dim here, chances are your body would be producing melatonin, and some of you would start closing your eyes. Okay? I see some people yawning, right? You're almost ready for bed. So those brain signals transition for us. I want to end off by talking about oxytocin. We want to replace that social media, those dopamine hits that students and adults are so drawn to. I often smile, and Sophie will smile, my daughter, as I say this. I watch my husband when he picks up his phone versus my behaviors on the phone, and Phil will sort of do this quick. It's so fast. And I'm almost positive, if I could scan his brain in that moment, those dopamine hits are, and he'll laugh and send me little short things of cats or, a truck or whatever the case may be. And they're quick pieces and bits of information. TikToks, the shorter they are, the faster they are, the more powerful they are. But what it's doing is causing inattentive behavior because the brain is getting hooked on the dopamine. What we want to do is replace that with oxytocin, this positive feedback loop, because we know that oxytocin acts as a messenger in the brain and has a very important role in human behaviors, such as recognition, parent-infant bonding, arousal, trust, romantic attachment. So in a study with chimps, urinary oxytocin levels were taken following food sharing. Sharing food, 2 chimps together, higher oxytocin, much higher than grooming one another. Okay? So the messaging here for us as adults, let's go back to the table and eat together. Let's share our food, and that's our talking time, right? For humans, one of the most important things we can do to really boost that oxytocin, you might be surprised, that's going to help our mood, is group singing. And I often say to my kids in the car, let's sing this one together. But this is quite beautiful, and I'll end off with 2 more slides. Whoops. I'll stop there, but it's a beautiful, does anyone get goosebumps when you hear a group of people singing like that? It's quite powerful, right? And yet we're hearing music programs get cut, the arts, so important. Anything that involves group work. My students in educational psychology have heard me say this many times, encourage kids to work in groups and to problem solve, because through that process, they're co-regulating one another. Here are some possible ways that you might restore, and if the way you restore is not on here, that's okay. Just know that do what works for you to restore, because we all need to restore. Gardening, bringing nature into your space, cuddling with a pet. We now have great research that just hearing a cat's purr can bring us back down to calm. My daughter's smiling. We have our 2 cats and we rely on them for regulation quite a bit. Lots of singing. Keep singing. I want to end off with this slide. I'm really lucky in that I got a social sciences and humanities research grant to examine the impact of stress on university students. I have to make some revisions to ethics, but I'm about to launch this study here at the Aurelia campus. And for those online from Thunder Bay, my doctoral student will be replicating this work in Thunder Bay. But we created a series of modules to help university students understand what self-regulation is and to help them through their stress so that they can build that resiliency. What are these modules about? Everything from building relationships with professors, working with your thesis supervisor, how to deal with stress, procrastination, all the topics that impact people here at the university level, whether they're undergrads or graduates, full-time students or part-time. And then we're going to conduct focus groups and administer the PSSI, which is an index measure to really look at the supports that are needed for students. And we're really hoping that teaching students about self-regulation and the strategies will support them through their time of stress and through their studies here at Lakehead. I want to thank everyone. I went way over time. My email is there. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to field them. Sometimes you have something privately you might want to ask me, someone in your family. Sometimes I get those kinds of questions. You may not want to ask that here. Totally fine. I know I touched on some sensitive topics tonight. Thank you for sitting through that. And if anyone's interested in the larger research studies we're doing, I've also included a link. And I also want to thank you for your participation. There was a lot of interaction happening, and I hope you met a new friend tonight. And if you didn't and you came with a buddy, that's wonderful too. But continue to lean on one another in times of stress. That is our source of hope. And we are here because of we have one another. We can lean on one another for support. We can't do this work alone. So on that note, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll take some questions if there's time. Yeah? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mastrangelo, Sonia. I think I began the evening tonight by acknowledging that for me, I feel calmer and just better about things when I'm in the room with Sonia, and I could kind of feel that in the room tonight as well. So I thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We are going to move into a question and answer period now here in the room. If you're online, and you're wanting to ask a question, Jacqueline is waiting for you to send those into mediarelations@lakeheadu.ca. So it's one word, mediarelations@lakeheadu.ca. Jacqueline's monitoring the site, and she will ask those questions on your behalf. If anyone in the room here is feeling at that point in their BRAC cycle where you need to grab a coffee or some cookies or whatever, we're just going to finish up today with about 15 minutes of questions, and then we'll be done for the evening. So the wonderful Nikki is here with the microphone. So if anyone in the room has a question, this is a great time for you to ask it. Can't wait to hear what Evie's going to ask.
Sweet girl.
Just in case you're wondering, Evie is my daughter, and so I can confirm that in times of stress, your eardrums are constricted, and at times you might not hear what people are trying to say to you.
I was wondering if you ever do elementary school visits, like to present a kind of version of this slideshow.
That's a great question. I would love to come to your school if that's an open invitation, but I've been really lucky, Evie. I think I have visited about 20 countries, South Korea, Peru. I've been to the Middle East 10 times, New Zealand, throughout the US. I get to do this work internationally. I do speak Italian, so a little bit of time in Italy doing this work. So the answer is yes, I have a version that's for teacher candidates. I have a version for young people. I've been doing this in Mishki-Gogamog First Nation. And with young children, I use puppets and drama. And we get little examples of the brain, and we talk to them about, we call it blue brain and red brain without using all the complicated terminology. Do you think it might be helpful at your school? Yes. Yeah? Okay. So we'll chat. We will chat and make some plans, Evie. Thank you. And thank you for volunteering. I really appreciate that. Any other questions about, it was a lot of information coming at you. I've been studying self-regulation for about 3 years. I've taken all the modules, and then I took the 1-year facilitators course, and using it in different contexts with individuals who are neurodiverse, with adults, with a variety of special needs, with teacher candidates. So self-regulation is for everyone. Any other questions or thoughts? We didn't spend a lot of time on the restoration, but I'm curious in this group, are people turning to yoga or Pilates? Anyone here? Yoga and Pilates, really good because of the breathing aspect, great for coming back down to homeostasis. Any runners out there or walkers? Yeah, Evie, that's good. Yeah, a lot of walkers. Anyone love spending time with pets, animals? Yeah, you find that very regulating. I have a friend who says, I'm stressed, I'm going to the spa. Yes, pets? Yeah, for sure.
The pets, I know I can see how it brings people down, like the stress and everything. But is there any truth to the idea of watching a pet also working in that, bringing the stress level down? Like,
Yeah.
even if you just see some dogs walking like on the sidewalk and you're not, or even videos, like if you see a video of animals doing something goofy, or is there something to that, or is that it's like, no, the video, no.
Yeah, I would suspect it doesn't have the same impact, but I can cite a research study where they looked at the cortisol levels, the stress hormone, in 2 groups. One group, they said, we'd like you to go for a city walk, 1 kilometer in the city. They took a different group and said, you're going to go for a 1 kilometer walk in the forest. Which group do you suspect had lower cortisol levels? They repeated that by then using the same people that did city versus forest walk. And of course, the results were cortisol levels came down a little bit for the city walkers, but not to the extent of those who walked in green spaces, right? And so if there were animals in there, all the wonderful things you see on a forest walk, you might see a fox or a coyote or a bird. We had a beautiful chat coming in. Nikki talked about going snowshoeing with someone who can identify the tracks and what you see out there. That is so regulating, and quite exciting, right? And I'm a snowshoer myself. I would love something like that. But for sure, seeing it on a screen, again, two-dimensional, not as impactful. I see a fox on a walk and I'm just like, wow. It's just, we don't see it that often. So when we see it, we become marveled at what nature really is all about. So we do know cortisol levels come down, but we need our green spaces. And as we know, what's the first thing? Students are punished. Recess is being taken away and we think, oh, why are we doing that? Because that's how we bring cortisol down. That outdoor time's important. It's important for us even on those cold winter nights. So I keep convincing my neighbor it's okay to walk in -20. Just layer up, we're gonna be okay. And we're on a streak now because we really try to go every night. Any other questions?
Yep, there's one from the online viewers. So the question is, does screen time mean television too?
That's a great question. And the answer is, if television time is with someone and you are discussing and commenting and laughing together with someone, it's social, not the same. Not the same, because there's an interactive component. When the movie is over, you're reflecting, you're discussing. It's not in isolation. Whereas our phones are quite isolating. It's very rare that it tends to be, this is my phone, and we'll put special blockers so that people can't see, right? It's mine and I don't want anyone to see what's on it. Whereas television it's open. It's, when I watch a movie at home, I'm always trying to bring someone in the family. I don't want to watch this alone. Will someone watch Bridgerton with me? I got to bring someone there with me because the first thing I do is pop the popcorn. And I don't want to be eating popcorn by myself. I'm going for popcorn, not Doritos. So much healthier. But yeah, there's food, there's someone else next to you, and you're discussing it. And remember, some screen time is okay, but there's some research coming out where kids are spending way too much time on screens. It's a lot of screen time when they can be outdoors moving their bodies. Great question to the person online. Thank you. Anyone else online or here in Aurelia? Evie? Go, Nikki.
So when I'm at home and I'm doing chores and stuff, I always like to put a podcast on and listen to that. But sometimes it's I listen to it too much and I just go straight home, put my earbuds in. And I'm wondering if you think that there's a difference between too much or just yeah.
So the answer is, I am so thrilled you're doing chores. There is a neuroscientist who wrote the book, it's not Mind Blindness. The title's not coming to me now, but I'm going to send it to your mom. She talks about the 7 essential pieces to really bring up that oxytocin, and doing chores is one of them, right? Doing a spring cleaning. Who feels good when they declutter? You feel good when you vacuum and you think, wow, all the cat hair is gone. There is a nice feeling. You might not feel that right now, Evie, but actually doing the chore is more important than the podcast. So you're doing the chore while listening to a podcast that's informative. That's lovely. That's wonderful. You're doing 2 things at the same time. Are you able to focus on the podcast while you're cleaning your room, for example? while you're cleaning. Yeah, and that's information coming to you. There's no harm in that. That's fantastic. I like that idea, actually. Thanks. Thank you. Anyone else? A question or a comment? Has anyone picked up some new information tonight, perhaps that you didn't know coming into this evening? Yeah, a few hands are going up. How many of you are feeling like, hey, I already knew this? And that's okay too. Like this is, my daughter put her hand up. She's been hearing this for years. Sorry, Sophie. Anyone else? New information that you can take away? Calm is your superpower, right? Being in that state of balance is one of the most wonderful feelings. And if I asked you to think about what calm feels like in your body, some kids can't even tell us that because they're in a constant state of stress. But if I asked all the adults in this room, do you know what it feels like to be calm in your body? Most of you can say, yeah. It's that feel good, I feel balanced, I'm alert, I can communicate, everything feels great. It's a feeling we often get on vacation, and you say, how do you replicate that the other 50 weeks of the year, right? You just feel, it's, one thing, Tamara, you asked, even being by a body of water is impactful. The sound of an ocean, walking through the sand, the sensory experience of feet on sand is wonderful for the body, right? Still much more impactful than seeing it on a screen. So when teachers often say to me, it's self-regulation time, everyone's going to stare at an ocean. I'll walk through and I see kids running around and they'll say, no, but it's regulation time. I've got the ocean going on the screen. It doesn't work for all kids, right? That's not regulating for many kids because it's the dead of winter and I'm staring at an ocean two-dimensionally on a screen. It's not going to help me come to calm. But what might be better is actually blocking everything out, listening to the ocean, and engaging in some yoga poses, much more beneficial for coming down and getting into that state of balance, right? Rather than forcing a child to sit upright and look at a screen. Anyone else? Thoughts or comments? Yes.
Oh, right, okay. So I'm a learning center teacher, and I feel like every day I co-regulate with like 22 different kids during the day. But do you have, and I sort of feel like when we learn about self-regulation, that we sort of do it as, not one-offs, but as I see things arising, we try to address them together. Do you, and we've used the Minds Up curriculum before, but do you have any other recommendations about like a good program that you could say, oh, in September, start here and like work through this with your class? And I also work with like primary students, and then I also have junior students and intermediates in a separate class. I know that's a very big question.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even going to ask it, and I thought this is the perfect place to ask it.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
It's a great question. I began my career in the same position you're in. The Simcoe County Board has adopted zones of regulation. There are so many out there. The problem with these programs, they teach it in a very, what I would call prefrontal cortex blue brain way. Teach kids the colors and what they mean and go into an environment and everyone needs to do the same thing at the same time. That's not how this works. At the end of the day, if I can say this, you are the strategy, not the program that you buy. It's the voice tone you use, the warm interactions that you have with students, the affirmations you give them, helping them along the way. When I'm in a classroom, whether it's students who are neurodiverse, who are learning to speak for the first time, and I start to use sign language, I know it's going to work for some students. Other students I won't be signing with because I know they need visuals. If I get stuck in a program and I only teach it to the program, I'm going to miss students that might not benefit from the program. Self-regulation, the way I've shown you tonight, is a process, not a program, and it really emphasizes, it puts the onus on you, and you said it beautifully. You are the co-regulator. You every day are the strategy. You could probably write your own book on all the kids you've worked with over the years and all of the tricks and strategies you've used. And I'm sure if I sat with you over a cup of tea, you would say, Sonia, this didn't work for this little guy, but this is what I tried one day, and guess what? It worked. Sometimes it's that trial and error. When someone says to me, how did you get kids with autism speaking for the first time? Well, we realized when they were down on the ground, they were walking on their toes, but when we elevated them 3.5 feet off the ground, they became aware of their body and space, and they spoke for the first time. You know, I got to use that strategy recently in Mishki-Gogamog and heard a child on the spectrum speak his first words using that. Is that going to work for every child? No, for some kids, it's happened magically when their body is on a platform swing and the vestibular system is activated, the first words come out. They're excited to be on the swing, and boom, then it produces language. So sometimes it happens by accident, and that's the same for us as adults. How many of you have picked up a love of a sport later on in life and you think, shoot, I could have been doing this for the last 15 years? Whether you're pole walking, snowshoeing, we pick up different things as we move along in life. But keep doing what you're doing, because you just talked about being a co-regulator to your students. And I would invite you to write a book about what you do, because you're working with so many different kids with different learning profiles. And it takes a special person to do that. And there was another hand I don't want to miss. Yeah. And if anyone has to go, by all means, have a lovely night. Stay warm.
This is just a comment. I was very interested to hear your points about stress and the disturbance for hearing.
Yes.
As for seniors, and as your body is changing and more things are more frustrating, stressful, etc. And I always kind of had a relationship with my mother particularly, that when there would be a stressful situation, no one could hear properly. She couldn't and I couldn't. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it could be encouraging for people to stress that as a benefit for exercise and being calm, that it will improve your hearing.
Yes.
Because there's many people say, oh, I don't need hearing aids, or I don't need to work on this because I can hear perfectly, and the stress just continues. So I think I've never heard that related to stress, and I think it's important and would be helpful.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can share on a personal level, my grandfather was profoundly deaf, and my father has hearing aids, and I've been diagnosed with tinnitus, so I'm slowly losing my hearing as well. And I have found that closed captioning is the most important thing for me right now, right? It's such a lifesaver, but I often find myself in meetings having to ask people to repeat. And sometimes I ask, should I tell them I have tinnitus? It's my right ear that's implicated, or I need to sit strategically in the space a certain way. But you're absolutely right. I do exercise 4 or 5 times a week. I do find it improves my own clarity and my stress levels. And I know for sure when I'm stressed, the ringing is profound. I see you nodding. It's certainly implicated because the muscles in the middle ear start to constrict even more, and the ringing is actually quite intrusive. Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, the last one from online. You mentioned encouraging teachers to have students work in groups. What about people who are introverted, who retreat when in a group, or need a lot of alone time? Is introversion something to be fixed?
Absolutely not. We honor students exactly where they're at, and introversion is wonderful. We need introverts in the world. And I think introversion, people mistake that as someone who always wants to work alone. I would argue that many introverts will say to me, I like working with one person, but please don't put me in a group with 6. It's just too much. And variety is the spice of life, right? Sometimes you'll work with someone, that's the person where I would say, you get to choose who your partner is today, right? As adults, we don't always get to choose the people we work with, but that's what makes it more interesting. I know for myself as a researcher, I've really made an effort, and this is the beauty of teaching here at the Aurelia campus because we're smaller. I'm working with 2 professors in business, 1 in environmental sustainability. I'm in education. Did I ever think I would be writing research grants, conducting research with people in an interdisciplinary way? But we have brought our worlds together, right? And it's made it interesting. I would consider myself an extrovert. So yeah, sometimes it's easy, but I do know that introversion is important too. I've learned to say, yeah, my body's saying I do need some alone time. So I would never force an introvert and say, you're in a group of 6 for the next 6 hours. You know, that's just the way it is. And you know, some might argue life is about working with people and relationships. It's working through that process. Adding 1 person to your group, do you think you can handle 2 today? Right? And build it slowly. I hope that's answered the person online. And I know we're probably out of time and everyone's tired. Brack cycle is reminding us of that. Sorry, I know it's close to 9.
No, it's wonderful. I want to thank you tonight, Sonia. This has been a really incredible learning experience, but also an incredible learning environment here in Aurelia, and I hope that you've been able to experience that too in the online environment as well. We have a gift here for you. I have a hug here for you.
Yeah. Best type of oxytocin right here. Thank you. There you go. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. Please come follow up questions, email. I would love to hear from you.
Wonderful. And I will say, just as we're leaving, you heard Sonia say that getting outside and connecting to Mother Nature is a wonderful part of what you can be doing. There was a reference to our Ontario Master Naturalist program. For those of you that are here in Aurelia, you can get outside and snowshoe and identify those tracks with our program. If you'd like to do that, just Google Ontario Master Naturalist program and Lakehead online. And for everyone, what I heard was that we should go home or turn off your computers, turn off all of your devices, don't take your phone to bed, get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, maybe, I don't know, do a sing-along with some people, and if you'd like to, have a little cry. Have a wonderful night, everyone.